Welcome to the Jamesport Christian Broadcast Network podcast, JCBN. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to JCBN, Jamesport Christian Broadcast Network, to the Not One Stone podcast and also our JCBN vlogcast here. That means we have audio that we upload to different audio sites for our podcast and our video cameras up for our vlogcast for our video sites. That way you won't miss a thing. If you want to see the video, you can do that. Or if you want to go listen to the audio on your way to work or traveling, feel free to do that also. Well, we have a special show for you today. About a little over a year and a half ago, I interviewed Brent Bischel. He is a preacher from California. He's a preacher for the Church of Christ there. A lot of times people ask, who else sees that Christ came back? Who else in the Church of Christ sees that Christ came back already? And why did they see it and how did they see it? Well, I've done some interviews on that, and I'm going to be bringing those to you as we get to them. But I'm going to bring you Brent's interview here. Now, Brother Brent grew up in the Church of Christ. He is a Church of Christ preacher, was a futurist for a long time. However, he found the truth and saw it in the Bible that Christ had already returned. And so I asked him at that time some questions off camera, and I'm going to go ahead and ask them here to Brent so he can answer these questions for you, and you'll be able to hear what he has to say about it. And first of all, I asked Brent, I said, Brent, what made you turn around? You were a futurist, so what made you see that Christ had already returned and came back? And this is what Brent had to say.
In about 2005, I really started to see the time statements in the New Testament, and like in Matthew 24, James chapter 5, Philippians 4 and 5, that the coming of the Lord is at hand. And so when I looked at the time statements, I started reevaluating the time statements in the New Testament, and that's kind of what got the ball rolling for me. And so I knew that there's no way that a time statement could be at hand for thousands and thousands of years, and or even longer. So at that point, I didn't know really what to do. And in 2005, there wasn't a lot of the social media that you have today, such as YouTube and other things. So YouTube was just getting going. So I didn't know what to do. And so I kind of sat on it for about 10 years. But I had in the back of my mind for at least a decade that the possibility of the second coming had already occurred. And so eventually I found, through YouTube and social media, I found other people who believe the same thing, and did some research, and finally got to where I am now. So that's how it began.
And I also asked Brent another question. Also was, why didn't all the old preachers in the Church of Christ, or a lot of the old futurists, why didn't they see the truth back then? What kept them from seeing the truth as we see it today, that Christ had already returned in 70 A.D.? And so I asked Brent that question, and this is what he had to say about that.
I think they have seen it, at least in part. I know I'm a big Foy Wallace fan, and I've gotten almost everything that he's ever produced in booklet form. And I know Foy was the main preacher who got us out, I say us, the Churches of Christ, out of premillennialism. He almost did it single-handedly. And so prior to that, we were going in the direction of the premillennialists. So Foy brought us over, combated that, defeated that within the church, and basically got us to amillennialism. When Foy came out with his commentary on Revelation in the 60s, that changed a lot. Of course, I wasn't a member of the church then. I was born in '68, so I really didn't have I wasn't involved in that. But I do know the era that Foy preached in. So when he came out with his commentary on Revelation, it was revolutionary in the church. A lot of the brethren, from what I hear, were not happy with that. They didn't agree with him. Nevertheless, they really couldn't refute it. And Foy was a partial preterist. So once I got turned on to the book of Revelation and got Foy's commentary and read it, that's where the hardcore journey into full preterism began for me. It began with Foy Wallace's commentary on Revelation. Once I read and comprehended that, I realized that all of the book of Revelation had to be already fulfilled. And if it was already fulfilled, then all the statements in it, such as in Revelation 1:1 and Revelation 1 and 3 and 22:16, had to be fulfilled, because the book ended the way the book began. And so if it ends the way it begins, then you automatically, or at least I did, knew that there is a framework here. And so everything in between chapter 1 and chapter 22 has got to fit within that framework. So that wasn't very hard to figure out. And I think that Foy Wallace believed that, yet I don't know why he didn't go into full preterism. I think Foy Wallace and other of our preachers were aware of works like Charles Russell's or James Stewart Russell's works, the Parousia. He did that back in the 1870s. And so I know that our brethren are aware of that. I know that they are aware of the eschatological term of preterism. As to why our brethren don't see it, I don't know. I think some of them did. I think Foy saw it, but I don't know why he didn't carry it out to its logical conclusion. I think he would have had a lot more success had he done so. But now that he's dead, he can no longer speak. So we're just up in the air as to why he didn't. But there are other people who did, and there are other brethren like Guyan Woods. He saw part of it, and our brethren can't help but to see at least part of what we are saying that the Bible teaches. I'll give you an example. When Guyan Woods debated the other brother named Frank, his last name was Franklin. He was I believe a Church of Christ member who went into Pentecostalism and embraced miracles. When Guyan Woods, in the Woods-Franklin debate, I think it was 1972 or 1974, Guyan Woods admitted and even made a chart. And his book on the debate I have in my library, and this is why I know this. He made a chart and he stated that the last days was not the gospel age. It was the end of the Jewish age from AD 30 to AD 70. And Guyan Woods used that argument against Franklin in his debate, and he even made a chart on this. And if you look at the chart, you'll see that is our position. Our position as full preterist Church of Christ preachers is that we have been taught wrong about the last days. The last days is not the Christian age whatsoever. It is referencing the last days of the Jewish age, which Guyan Woods believed. That's what Guyan Woods taught. Now, I know that there were a lot of preachers who disagreed with Guyan Woods on that statement, but Guyan Woods saw what we see. As to why Guyan Woods wouldn't carry that on through to its full end, I have no idea. So we have brethren today, such as myself, and other brethren now, because of the lectures and different things. I think social media has played a big role. They're seeing it, and now they're not as afraid when they see us to come out and say and admit, yes, I see this. I'm starting to understand things, and futurism cannot be true. So they are starting to come out. It's very hard to judge someone's motives, especially when they're already passed. Guy in the Woods is gone as well. So I think that I know that there are preachers in the past who saw part of this, bits and pieces of this. I'll give you another example. Franklin Camp, he's a very famous preacher, or was, and he's also passed away. He believed, at least partially, he was a partial preterist in that he believed that Matthew 24 was about the destruction of Jerusalem, and so was the book of Revelation about the destruction of Jerusalem. So these men saw bits and pieces, and I think that more than likely they saw different bits and pieces, and I think that if we really knew the whole of it, if you added them all up, you're going to get either exactly what we're teaching today or something very close to what the full preterist movement in the Church of Christ is espousing today. But there are more and more men coming out. So it's very difficult to say why these old-timers did not see it. They didn't fully see it, or maybe they did fully see it, and they only wanted to come out with bits and pieces of it. But we see that there are different pieces of the puzzle by different old-time preachers, and I think when you start putting them together, they all fit in the framework, and you're starting to build what we now have in the Spirit and Life lectureship in full preterism.
Well, that was Brother Brent Bischel from Springville, California. And, I certainly enjoyed that interview that we did together there, and maybe that'll give you some more insight to things. And, as you listen to Brent talk there at what caused him to turn from a futurist to understanding the truth of the Bible that Christ had already came back in 70 A.D., he said was time statements. So he talked about the time statements that really turned him around there. We have another podcast that we put up just a few days ago with Brother Holger Neubauer, talking about the time indicators. So they're very important for us to know and understand as we study our Bibles. We have to follow a principle, a hermeneutical approach when we study the Bible. And as we read the Bible, we have to keep in mind that hermeneutical principle of audience relevance. So that's what brings us to these time statements and also audience relevance. So they seek to discover the original audience and the time it took place and so forth. So we have to understand what a passage means. So remember, I said before in one of my lessons that the Bible was written for us, but not to us. So we always have to remember when we study about, keep in mind a time statement and audience relevance. Who was he talking to? Where were they? What was he talking about? If we can remember these time statements, they'll help us in our study that we talked about here. Now, again, we had another preacher that we previewed on our podcast, Brother Holger Neubauer. He's a preacher in Michigan. He talked about the time indicators. So a lot of times you study these time indicators or time statements, as we call them, then sometimes they'll get you to where you can understand things more clearly about things. Over in Revelation chapter 3 and the verse 11, as I talked about in one of my latter studies, he said there, "Behold, I am coming quickly. Hold fast to what you have, that no one may take your crown." So we see a time indicator there, time statement. I am coming quickly. We see there. So we all through the Bible, as we study and look at these time statements, we see coming quickly, fixing to come, at hand, shortly, laid at the root of the tree. We can see that they're not thousands of years in the future. They were for them then. What about Revelation 1 and 3 said, "Blessed he who reads those who hear the words of this prophecy and keeps those things which are written, for the time is near." So we see another time statement there. Jesus said to the first century church in Thyatira, he wrote to those churches in Revelation, 7 literal churches. He said to that church there in Revelation 2 and 25, "But hold fast what you have till I come." He's telling them, hold fast to what you have until I come. Now you think about that. Those 7 literal churches that were written to back then aren't existing today. He was telling them, you You hold fast to what you have till I come. And then he talked to the church there in Philadelphia in Revelation chapter 3 and the verse 11. He said, behold, I'm coming quickly. And he tells them, that congregation, hold fast to what you have, that no one may take your crown. So he's just told those congregations, those churches there, to hold fast what you have, you see, and because I'm coming quickly. He's fixing to come there. Revelation 22, the verses 6 through 7. Then he said to me, these words are faithful and true, and that the Lord God of the holy prophets sent his angel to show his servants the things which must, listen now, shortly take place. And the verse 7, behold, the Lord said, I am coming quickly. Blessed is he who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book. And then over Revelation 22 and 10, and he said to me, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, don't seal it up, because why? The time's at hand. Now's the time. So don't seal this book up, he's saying. So we see that there in Revelation 22 and 12 says, and behold, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me to give everyone according to his work. Revelation 22 and 20, he who testifies to these things says, surely I'm coming quickly. Amen. Even so, come Lord Jesus. So we see there the time statements coming quickly. He's telling the churches that are no longer existing today, he's telling them, you hold fast to what you have, because I'm fixing to come. I'm coming quickly. And so again, as we say it here in the South, fixing to do it, fixing to come. So he's telling that. So we have to keep in mind also, other than time statements, audience relevance, which seeks to discover what the original audience understood at the time they heard it. Okay, again, the Bible was written to them. It's for us, but it was written to them. When he said he was coming soon, he said he's coming, and his coming was what? At hand. To them, at hand. So he said he was coming in the lifetime of those that he was speaking to. Again, it's very simple to understand. So I can understand as we interviewed Brother Brent Bischel there, I can understand where you would, if you understand this audience relevance and these time indicators, and you can see them and understand them, that's going to get you to study harder and understand more and more about why Jesus already came. So again, we certainly appreciate you here with us on JCBN, Jamesport Christian Broadcast Network, and the Not One Stone podcast, and also on our JCBN blogcast. We're up on video sites, YouTube, Facebook, Vimeo, Rumble, a lot of those, and then we're over on sound sites also, the Podbean podcast, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon, places like that. So you'll be able to pick this up on not only video but also on audio, and we certainly appreciate it. Another place that you can find us if you want to study more about the second coming of Christ, please, or have any questions for us, join us at our website at www.gojcbn.com. That's GOJCBN.com. So go to gojcbn.com today and study more about it, or if you have questions that we might be able to answer, go over there and ask them, and we'll certainly try to get to you as soon as we can. We certainly appreciate you listening to these podcasts and vlogcasts. Again, hope you have a wonderful week ahead. May God bless you in your studies. Thank you for listening.